Hi, guys. So, welcome
Hey.
to the Growth, Challenges, and Reality podcast from yours truly, the fourth year social work students from VU.
Yay.
Woo!
Yay! All
Welcome,
right.
everybody,
I
to the
guess
podcast.
thank you for
Hello.
that warm introduction, Tanya. So I think we should start by introducing ourselves and maybe just where you're at with your placement because some of us are finished, some of us are halfway, over
Yes.
halfway. We're all kind of at different stages. So I'll start. I'm Nakiah. I'm at Barwon Health. My first half of placement was in palliative care. Now I'm in women's and children's team, and I am just over halfway.
I am Alicia. I'm doing my placement at Western Health Sunshine Hospital, and I've been in the cancer services team and the medical specialty acute wards, which has been really awesome.
I am Ayushi, right now doing my placement in Parkville Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing Services, previously known as Origin, and I'm particularly in Youth Mood Clinic and Psychosocial Recovery Program.
I'm Irene and I'm doing my placement at Caroligism Society within the Integrated Family Services team.
I'm Tania. I did my placement at Anglican Victoria, specifically in the Navigator program, and I'm finished. Completely done.
Yay.
Woo!
Good
All
work.
right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for that, everyone. It was really nice to hear what you're all doing. It's good start. I guess I'll start with the first question, which would have just popped up on the screen for you all to see. So about theories and skills. So I guess when that question comes to mind for me, I'm thinking of a strengths-based approach. I guess at the beginning of all my studies and for my first placement, I was struggling with that theory to practice connection, but I am understanding that a lot more in my second placement, and it's been a lot easier to see how I'm using those theories in practice. I guess the strengths base comes to mind, particularly with the palliative care ward. A lot of the time, their focus is around their diagnosis and the challenges they're going to face ahead. And so, in our position, I guess it's really important that we are able to find the strengths that the clients have and focusing on their abilities and resilience and their resources, which really help empower them and build them up as a person rather than just focusing on their diagnosis, which I think is really important.
True.
Yeah, that's really good. And as well, like I've noticed that as well because I'm doing a hospital placement as well, that like the palliative care space is definitely something where you're, and the hospital in general is when you're working person centered and they're at the center of our all of our approaches, frameworks. And yeah, I think a big skill that I think I've had to acquire across my whole social work journey and placements is like questioning. I think that's been a big skill for me through like my doing my psychosocial assessments, depending on the ward I'm at. Like in an acute setting, sometimes you really have to just get that direct questioning, and I think and clarifying questioning, and I think that's been a big goal for me to try and achieve over this placement and through my social work studies.
Cool. I think for me, in terms of theories and skills, there has been really a blend of many theories that I'm using. However, the foundation has always been a system theory. And that's probably one of the theory that I like and my supervisor likes as well. But beside that, there's always been an involvement of trauma-informed, strengths-based, and recovery-oriented theory. Because I think this is probably my stigma when I got into a mental health was that, oh, once you've got mental health, it's going to be really hard to recover. Whereas for me, it's been really mindset shifting to meet some people who has actually recovered every day and to sit down and have conversation with them and get to learn from them. So for me, it's been quite a blend. At the same time, instilling hope when I'm talking with the person in front of me.
Yeah, restorative like
Yeah,
approaches.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like because I'm very aware that I'm meeting some of these people probably in the lowest time of their
Yeah,
lives.
and meeting them where they're at. It's
Where
such a
they're at.
key thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's more about okay, how can I come into their label and then be able to support them as much as I can with everything that I've got.
I think that's very similar to where I'm at with Navigate at the moment. A lot of these young people have this set like perspective of who they are as a person. Some of them do have some diagnosis and mental health issues, and they're just set that that's them, that's who they are, they're this and this and this. Whereas they've got so many other like strengths to them, and they don't see it. So I think you're right, meeting them where they are and helping them see that they've got the potential to grow, and it's just a matter of just helping them see that. And yeah. What about you, Irene?
Yeah, so at the beginning of the degree, I just look at theories in a very textbook way, and placement has changed that a lot. So I know like social work theories, but I don't know how to apply it into practice. So at my placement, the cohort is mainly children under 5. So I would say I use a lot of, say, attachment theories, strength-based practice, trauma-informed care, and system theories. Instead of just focus on one issue, I start to see how everything is connected, like, say, parenting capacity, trauma, housing, all of it, how it affects a person. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
think another thing I realized with my placement, a lot of the outreaches that we do are very informal. I think I went into it thinking that it was going to be so clinical, it was going to be so like set in stone, textbook, everything. But when I went there, it was completely the opposite. I think one of my outreaches, I went to the zoo and I led the outreach, and it was so informal and like the theories are. I realized I was putting theories in without even realizing that
Yeah,
they were
like
there.
just say like even like listening, like that
Yeah.
active listening, that's a skill, and it's a skill that we actually don't even realize sometimes that we're using, but it's actually doing a lot for that person, just having that person to listen to their story.
Yes, and on the same note, the biggest difference that I saw in my placement and continue to see is that when it comes to the non-clinical settings and being informal in terms of indigenous cohort and those who are from non-indigenous background, and I think that's been my biggest shift in terms of like with all the trauma and intergenerational history that's there out in terms of stolen generation and everything, being in a proper clinical settings, it's quite confronting for some of our indigenous folks out there. And so I think that's one of the things that I learned as well in terms of working with indigenous background, me coming from non-indigenous background, is to understand where I've come from and really to have that critical reflection honestly. It's more about me being honest with myself.
Yeah.
Really, when it comes to working with Indigenous people. And this is something that was pointed out to me by one of the Aboriginal liaison officer at PIMS, where I'm doing my placement at. And that it's all about knowing myself and it's about being open. And going back to what you said, listening, right? It's more about active listening and really just
Narrative
being
therapy.
there.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that answered our second question amazingly. Thank you for that beautiful answer. I think going off from that, being at the hospital, we also have our Aboriginal health liaison and our mental health liaison officers. And I think I've spent a bit of time working with them to understand their roles and how they support our Aboriginal people in the hospital. And I think they do a bit of outreach and inpatient work as well. But I guess from an inpatient perspective, really speaking with them on how we can best support our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people from a social work perspective, and especially when it comes to asking about their identity and doing this in a way that feels safe and comfortable and with reasoning as well, like explaining why we ask this. And I think the big thing that comes with that is also being able to have an understanding of why they might not identify in our health systems and the history that's behind this. And that's been one thing that I've been making a conscious effort to educate myself on. I think the history and the concerns and the worries that come up if someone reads in the system that they identify as Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander. So it's
I
a
think
really
it's
big thing.
we're very lucky that we've been taught this in our bachelor. We have special subjects based off this and understanding cultural dynamics behind, I guess, First Nations when working with First Nations peoples, and I think this is such an important thing as well, like just the data that we know as social workers. We know, like, as well in the hospital, we had a lot of like education from the First Nations health liaisons, which was great because we learnt like First Nations people are more likely to leave emergency department just without seeing a doctor. And we also know that First Nations peoples are more likely to discharge against medical advice. And I think in my practice, this has helped me to learn, I guess, approaches when working with First Nations people and to reflect on when I am seeing a First Nations person in hospital, how am I maximising that session to get the best for them, the best opportunities for them, I guess, in a way that's culturally safe, knowing that they might not be there the next day.
Yeah, and I think, like, especially in the hospital setting, that is a big thing to be educated around. And I've heard examples in my women's and children's team that where Aboriginal women have come in to have their babies and they haven't wanted to identify with fear that reports will be made to child protection or their children will be taken off of them all because of their identity. And it's really heartbreaking to just hear those stories and yeah.
Yes, and just reminded me in terms of working with Aboriginal people. It's okay. I don't know everything, you know, and I'm still young and learning. So I think one thing that I did was I actually went and approached to Aboriginal liaison officer and I said, hey, listen, I have no idea. Can I shadow you for a couple of days and see how you work with Indigenous people and their family?
Yeah, and it's that whole idea that our education and learning is always developing. We're never going to know everything. And I think it's important to make that conscious effort to keep developing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Ayushi. I feel like cultural safety is very important, and it starts with just accepting that, yeah, I don't know, like, I don't know what is it, and I'm open to learn. And during my placement, I had a chance to visit VACA, and they share some tips and skills when working with Aboriginal people. That is just let them know that I don't know anything about like, say, your culture, what is your preferences, and I'm open to learn, and you don't have to fake that you know everything.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So yeah, for me that is very important.
I think I'm in the same boat as everyone here. I know probably, although we did all the theories in classes, we did all the classes, we've done them, but we're still kind of oblivious to what actually the reality is.
Yeah.
And for me, I did the same as everyone else was. Approached my Callum Aboriginal liaison person. I was like, can I just liaise? Like, can I just shadow you for one day? And although we didn't visit a Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander client that day, the conversations I had with him were amazing. He just said that you'll never actually be the expert or master of anything, but as long as you let that person, as long as you stand, I think he said, as long as you stand beside them or behind them and let them guide what they need and want, that's all you can do. And I think that's really important.
Absolutely. It's all about giving that space, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think as well, like, decolonizing social work, a profession that's like based, like, have so much stigma around, like, the stolen generation. It's just like avoiding that Western, like, problem focused model and how can I fix this? How can I fix that? Because sometimes that's not what they're wanting. Sometimes or needing. It's maybe that, like, just storytelling and sitting down and just actually just sharing.
We might be the ones with the qualifications, but they're the ones that's
hold the knowledge.
Yeah,
and it's all within those conversations that you really learn. Not just like your formal training. You can just learn a lot from having a conversation with someone.
Yeah,
and just on that note, it's just sometimes having that genuine human connection changes everything. Right, in social work, it's not just about that proper clinical setting, but more about, hey, you know what, I really care about you.
Yeah, like human to human at the end of the day. Like,
absolutely.
there might be that professional client, kind of like power dynamic, but we're all human at the end of the day. We're all learning. We're all here to,
Yeah. And I guess like that comes down to like our values as social workers and what we value and what we come into the practice with, what our personal values are and how that translates in a professional setting, and are we morally keeping up to that standard in our personal lives. And I think that's really important, and especially through this course, this journey that we've been on through social work. I think it's really, practicing our professional judgment and our professional assessments, and I guess in different placement settings it looks different. So
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess finding that, like literally what you said, finding that balance between your personal values and professional boundaries, and I guess that like ethical practice coming into play with that as well.
Absolutely. I think every one of us might have experienced this and should have experienced this in placement, and that is there is going to be ethical dilemmas. And I had quite a few of them, but something that was prominent was this ethical dilemma where I was quite confused in terms of what system tells me, as in what the government law says me, and as a social worker, what human rights tells me, right? And of course, there's ethics, but at the end of the day, who am I as a worker? But probably I can come back to that later on.
Yeah.
But I think, yes, ethics is the big guidance in terms of when you're sitting there thinking, okay, what can I do? I'm so confused. There's nothing way forward.
Yeah.
And that's when I feel like ethic really comes in and really kind of guides the way or shows the way. And sometimes in terms of boundaries, yes, you can be building that rapport and building that connection with the person, but at the same time, you can hold that boundary, right? And,
Yeah, I think for me, when it comes to like that balance between personal values and professional boundaries, I guess kind of in my first placement, like last year, we were quite long-term care, so we were kind of always involved right to the very end. But at the hospital, it's balancing this like the value of not like you so caring and have this empathy and want to like have such a concern for them. But then, like, once they're out of the hospital, like, you're no longer involved in their care. So I guess having, like, those personal values of wanting to know, wanting to care, wanting to hear what the outcome was, but then that professional boundary of once they're out of the hospital, like, it's not actually our kind of, like, professional jurisdiction anymore. And I think the biggest thing with that has been, like, our child protection reports. You make the report to child protection for example, for a baby who might be in, like, the special care nursery, and, you want that best outcome for the mum and the baby, and then they get discharged from the hospital, and then you're kind of like, well, you don't really hear anything back, and you don't ever get an update. You don't know what's happened. And I think that's what kind of sits like the hardest with me is like kind of separating that two about. Yeah, so that's kind of been like one of the challenges.
I think I relate with you with that one. With Navigator, we work with the clients for a max of 12 months. And that was one thing I honestly struggled with. Kept having conversations with my supervisor. I was like, so you're working with this client for, like, you've seen them grow from basically like a nervous little baby to they've grown into this, amazing adult. How do you just work with them, know everything about this stuff, let them grow and blossom, and then just nothing? And I was like, I don't know how I'll like manage that. Like, I've been working with this client for probably less than 3 months in the Boost program, and now that I'm finished, I'm thinking back like, what am I gonna do? Like I know that she's got these issues going on. This is what she's going through. But I know all of this, and now I'm done. I can't help her anymore. I can't have these like one-on-one car drives with her. She can't debrief with me.
And so we need to let that empowerment, like them. We've empowered them, and now that's up to them, I guess.
I think what I've been told to learn is that I can't just be like the hero. I can't just help them solve everything. I've got to do what I can and let them do the rest.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think like that's where like looking from an ethics, like that professional integrity, like having the boundaries, working within our scope, and then it's like, and then that kind of that end of that professional relationship, and it kind of just comes to an end, and it's navigating like that. you kind of have to just let that go, which is really hard on placement when you're working with someone for such a long time.
Yes.
And then you've just got to kind of leave.
Also with like the day to day, I'll
Yeah.
hear like clients would like disclose something, and I'll find myself bringing it back home and like stressing about it, and I'll bring it to debrief like the morning after. I'm like, just like, you can't do that. Like, you need to prioritize yourself. I know this is stressful, but you need to, prioritize yourself, and
Yeah.
you will work through this with this client and stuff like that.
And I think I can quite relate with you, Tanya, there. And that is after you've built this rapport, built this relationship. And I think something that has really helped me is to kind of let them articulate their goals. Like sit there and be like, okay, what do you want to get out of our session together? Or another that's helped me is that, okay, yes, we've just got this much time together, but if something ever happens, or if there's any other bumps in life, you can always come back. You can always re-refer yourself, and just that advocacy right there, that you know what, you can advocate for yourself, even though there is a limitation of the services. There's so many other services that's out there.
Yeah. I think one thing that sat really well with me from an article that I read was where ethics isn't just rules, but something you actually work through in everyday practice, and like that's kind of stuck with me. Which I think,
I really like that.
Yeah, for me, this was honestly one of the biggest learning curves for me. So I find myself naturally become more empathetic towards my clients, especially families going through hardship. But I've had to learn how to balance that with like my professional boundaries and my ethical responsibilities. So like for say example, situations around confidentiality really stood out, say, especially when clients might know each other. It made me realize how important it is to be very clear and careful about maintaining privacy. And in terms of boundary, like Tanya mentioned earlier, like you spend such a long period of time with your client, and then at the end of the service, I had an experience where the client tried to gift us something, and
It's a classic.
We've had those.
yeah, we can't take it, and I learned how to say sorry. No, we can't do that. Like the client is very upset, but
It's hard from a
Yeah.
culture perspective when some
Yeah.
cultures that's their way of really
Yeah.
saying thank you, like cooking or food, and you can't accept it.
Yeah.
And that
Exactly.
breaks their heart just as
Yeah.
much as yours.
I think that's something that happened to us, Alicia, in our third year placement, where
Yeah.
this client came in with this boxes of baklava or something.
Yeah,
right?
like handmade biscuits she made.
And
We just
take
couldn't
it.
accept it. And
Yeah.
yeah, I guess that where it goes between our ethics and our values and that boundary we have to set.
yes.
Sorry, just one more thing about like also being transparent as well. So during my placement, when I introduce myself, I let them know that I'm a student,
Yeah.
and
Oh, yes,
yeah,
that's
it's very important to let them know
Yeah.
yes, to be transparent, and also I always inform them about like say if we need to contact say child protection.
Yeah, that's
For
so
advice,
important.
we will let you know first before consult with them. Like be transparent with them to build the
Trust.
relationship. Build trust with them
Yeah.
is very important as well.
It's the same thing in my case. Working with a young person, it's like not just child protection or other services, but it's about letting their parents know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's a very important part. So it's more about sitting with them and discussing, okay, what do you want me to disclose and what not,
Yeah.
has helped. Yeah.
I think as we're all coming to our journey towards the end of our placement, and we're not far from graduating, as we're finishing off, I'd really love to hear from you all how like your placement experiences have shaped your emerging professional identity, and I guess like the kind of social worker you all aspire to be in the future. I think it's a really good point to reflect on.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's just like kindness goes such a long way in our work, and just being on their side and listening to their story with no judgment, because I think a lot of the time the people that we're going to be speaking with and working alongside, judgment is something they may come across every day. So just being that one person that just hears them things and understands them and tries to understand them from their perspective to help advocate for them, especially if they're not able to advocate for themselves, especially in the hospital, working with a lot of like sometimes like NDIS patients or elderly patients that, you know, sometimes they don't always know their rights, and just I think just working with them and other like people, just showing them that bit of kindness that they might not get from the rest of the system. Yeah, I just think that's been my biggest takeaway from start to finish of this whole course.
I really do agree with that one, and I think being on like two very opposite ends of the scale for this rotation, you're starting in care that it's end of life care, dealing with patients who are at the end of life, to now I'm working with little babies who have just come into the world. I think kindness goes a really long way. That kindness and empathy are the two things that I've really seen, that they just, it doesn't matter what stage of life you're in or what stage you're working with someone, it goes such a long way. And just like really being genuine, like with our clients, showing genuine interest in what they have to say, what they are reflecting on. And I think that really helps like connect with them.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm still a baby, to be honest. And this is something that I feel like as I go ahead and as I work as a social worker, this is something that will build up in time. But at the same time, there are definitely some non-negotiables for me. And that is, yes, kindness. And also for me, another one, big one is acceptance.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
know
I like that.
yeah, I've got a feedback from a young person sitting across the room and just saying me, thank you for believing in me. And that really touched my heart. And that's something I think I remember every day in terms of like, okay, let me just be there, listen to them and accept them.
And that's what they want sometimes, someone
Absolutely.
just to listen.
And you know what, guys? That is so healing. That is so healing. Like when someone's just there listening to you and accepting you.
Yeah.
And even though it's a crazy story, you're just sitting there and be like, you know what? Yes, that makes sense to me. And another one is being non-formal. Like not non-formal in terms of my work, but
having
in
those
terms
boundaries,
of having those boundaries, yes. But at the same time, in terms of building that rapport, you know, it doesn't have to be me sitting in a room like a cubicle and talking to them. It can be, oh, can we just go out in the nature or in the park and just sit and
Really
have a
what they're
conversation?
comfortable
Yeah,
with.
or just be playing table tennis and just have a conversation. And or sometimes, because I'm in boxing as well, can we just box and have a conversation?
But your next boxer.
Oh yes,
Famous boxer.
it's part of my thing that my placement has offered me is boxing once a week.
That's amazing.
I know, right? And you get so much out of it, more
Yeah.
than the clinical settings.
I think so too.
Incredible.
At one
Yeah.
of my outreaches, I actually took one of the kids to basketball. At first, it was a gym outing, and I was like, oh, can't do gym. But we decided on basketball. And I thought, how is this going to work? Like, he's going to be playing basketball. I can't run after the ball. Like, I'll just stand here as a rebound or whatever.
Hope you had your running shoes on, Tanya.
No, I didn't. Sorry. But, yeah, like, I saw the difference between the clinical side where, like, sometimes we'll just go to their home, do a home visit, and we'll sit at the dining table and sit and just talk. And the mum's just talking or the dad's just talking and the kid's just sitting there listening. Whereas the one-on-ones where you take them out to outreaches, it's just so much more fun. And I've never met this, like, young person before, but the past, like, within 5 minutes of me just roasting him how shit his throws were, we became, like, besties. He was dapping me up and I was like, okay, this is, like, I think what I want to be. Like, what the
Besties
type
in
of
a professional way.
Exactly. This is the social worker that I can see myself being as.
Yeah.
I can't, like, although it is part of my job, but I don't think I can see myself as, like, suit and tie walking into this house. Like, hey, okay, so this is this and this. I can't think I can do that.
I think as well, like another big thing I forgot to mention is like all of these skills we're using in development, but also like supervision and self-reflection, I think is such a big thing that has like helped with our emerging professional identity. And I feel like probably you all would agree that it's such an important part of the role. And sometimes it might feel like you don't want to do it, but it really does help to sit there and just to reflect and have someone else to talk to. Like it really is a really great.
And also, just to add on to that, guys, we should not forget that we hold power.
We do.
Like, we're a social worker, we really hold that power. Be that we're going for the home visit, they know why we are there, right? And just to be aware of that as well, like, okay, I hold some degree of power here. How can I navigate so that I can still build that relationship, still build that rapport and still be able to support them the best I can.
Yeah.
That critical reflection
Yes,
in practice,
absolutely.
in future practice.
Yeah,
For me, I think my placement has helped me a lot in shaping who I am as a social worker in the future. I asked that question to my task supervisor, everyone, and they don't know what kind of social worker that they want to be. But
But they are
I'm-
social workers. So.
Yeah. I would just say that maybe I'm just Irene, the social worker. There's no specific way to describe it, but I would say one big shift for me was moving away from thinking that like I need to solve the problems and I need to fix
Yes,
everything.
that-
yeah.
yeah.
It's okay not to have the answer to everything.
That's the
Sitting in
quickest
the uncomfortable and not knowing.
Yeah.
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 and that's the quickest way to burn out, guys.
Yeah, exactly. And some experiences also challenge my assumption, like what you mentioned earlier, how powerful it is to be a social worker and to enter someone's house. For every home visit, like I will have to do an observation and say, through my lens, I see this house is messy, but through their lens, that is the best that I could do for themselves. And that makes me less become judgmental. And more empathetic towards the client situation. That they have tried their best.
I think one of the advices that my supervisor would tell us is that whenever you're writing these observation notes, imagine like that client just sitting behind
Yes.
you and watching what you're writing.
Mine says
Yeah,
the same thing.
true.
And just
Oh, yes.
imagine
Yeah.
that note being subpoenaed in the future.
Oh, yes.
Imagine
Yeah.
if that kid, like you must
agree.
imagine if they thought that you like were the best social worker, but then they grow up, they want to know what you said, and they've read that, and they're like, wait,
And I think
Was
that's
this-
my approach when I write the notes as well. It's like, okay, yes, the young person I'm working with right now is 12 years old. And imagine that person turns 30 and comes back to me and asks me my notes. Okay, what have you written about me? Is it going to be empowering?
I know. And I think all in all, we can probably all sit here and say that we really are starting to feel like social workers. And I think that's really what is important when it comes to our professional identity. And I think coming to the end of our podcast, I think just a little funny element. I'd love to hear what has gotten you through placement, whether it's your friends, your dog, a coffee every day. For me, it's really the connections I've made through uni and the great friends that I have had since year one and I still have now. And obviously my dog, they always help.
Yeah, I think for me, like over the whole course, I think just in that third year when you kind of like get used to being familiar with all the people in your class and you meet new people on placement, like I met Ayushi, I think just that those relationships just
Yes.
really helped me get through these last 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's the same for me. But at the same time, coffee, guys.
Yes.
The amount of caffeine
Yeah,
I've
that
consumed.
coffee cafe at the middle of the VU
My
Footscray campus.
goodness.
Shout out to the VU Cafe.
So, yes, and of course, picking up new hobbies.
Yep.
Yeah, trying different new things. And yeah.
For me, probably just like small things that keep me going day to day. Like having time to myself to reset, going for a walk. And supervision, very important. It's so good to get things out of your chest. Yeah.
at my place when we did morning debriefs every morning, and sometimes we don't even have to talk about what the cases are. We just talk about what we did last night, the weekend, and okay, there was one time, I shouldn't have said this to my supervisor, but I did. Well, she was asking, like, oh, how was your, like, what did you guys get up to last night? And I was like, honestly, I went home, we finished early that day, so I did do my work, and then I went to sleep. So she asked me, and I was like, oh, I actually took a 12-hour nap. And I think, as much as that's, like, crazy, I think that's what really helped me get through, like, placement. My sleep. You need to sleep.
Lots of
You need to
sleep.
prioritize self-care. It's so big. Even if you have a little me day where you just go out and shop, just prioritize those days.
Retail
True.
therapy.
Yeah, I think that brings us to the end. I really appreciate hearing all your perspective, and I can't wait to see us all at graduation standing up on that stage with our
capping
certificate.
gowns. Pretty.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
not long left.
Thank you,
Thank
girls.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
I walked through nights that felt endless, carrying stories I never told, but every wound became every scar